Fire Emblem Engage is a deep and rewarding tactical RPG. However, it has a steep learning curve, and to get the most out of Engage, you need to engage with all its systems. Here are 14 things you should know before starting your adventure. The weapon triangle is back, and it's important to know every weapon and unit strengths and weaknesses on the battlefield. Swords beat axes, axes beat spears, and spears beat swords. Simple enough, especially for longtime fans, but that's only scratching the surface. Physical attack arts are strong against magic users, dagger throwers, and arrow shooters. Meanwhile, those arrow shooters, or archers as some might call them, are super effective against flying units. One well-placed arrow can easily ground a Pegasus Knight. Meanwhile, the best way to deal with an armored unit is to cook them, literally. Direct a fire-based home at one of these units and they'll burn alive. Neat. Spells in general are good against armored units, but in my experience, fire spells seem to be the best. Taking advantage of the weapon triangle and physical attacks also inflicts something called break. This causes the defending unit to drop their weapon and leave them open for another attack. Of course, enemies can also break your unit, so be careful. Keep in mind that you can only inflict break on an enemy if you deal damage. Occasionally, a damage calculation will do 0 damage. Even if you have the superior weapon, you will not break your enemy. Terrain can play a big role in Fire Emblem Engage, and it's important to recognize what each tile does. First of all, you can see any terrain effects in the upper left-hand corner when you've highlighted a unit. The most common terrain type are thickets that increase evasion and decrease mobility. Most battlefields will have forests or something similar that will increase evasion, so it's in your best interest to occupy those spaces and bait enemies out of them. Towers are rare, but they can increase evasion, and the occupying unit will recover 10 HP at the beginning of each turn. Quicksand and shallow water will greatly hinder movement. Of course, flying units are unaffected by terrain entirely. They won't get the benefits or hindrances, so keep that in mind as you command your crew.
I'm ready to dig in. I'm sorry.
Sometimes the best defense is a good defense. By pressing ZL, you can see the exact range of your enemies. The purple tiles show you how far they can move and attack. As long as you stay outside that range, you should be safe. I highly recommend turning this on at the start of each battle and leaving it on for the entire skirmish. If you're overwhelmed by the opposition, sometimes the best play is to fall back and let enemies come to you. Find some decent terrain to hold up in and go on the defensive. Some enemies, though, won't rush you until you're in their range. I typically like to lead with a tankier unit to bait the shy units out and then hammer them on my next turn.
Don't waste it on me.
Fire Emblem Engage introduces a lot of characters, especially in the early hours, and any of the characters you neglect will quickly become irrelevant. Fortunately, when a new character is introduced, you are forced to use them for a battle. I highly recommend running new characters through their paces to see if they fit within your core team of units, because if you forget about them, it could take a ton of careful grinding to get them up to snuff. For example, I think Lapis is cool as hell. Unfortunately, I forgot about her, and now she's way too underleveled to participate in any combat scenarios. There are ways I could level her up, but they require a lot of patience. Sorry Lapis, there's another universe where you're the star of my army. Sorting through multiple inventories is a pain. Thankfully, Fire Emblem Engage lets you auto-equip units with the touch of a button. You can do this on an individual unit basis, or before battle, you can auto-optimize your entire active team. Be warned though, this will remove all items from your inactive units, so if you decide to bring them back into the fray, you'll need to re-equip them. The last thing you want is your healer to roll onto the battlefield without a staff. Fire Emblem Engage's class system is deeper than ever. If you meet the proper requirements, any character can rock any class. In order to pull up the class menu, press plus, select inventory, then select the unit whose class you want to change, and select change class. Here you can see the level requirements, required weapon proficiencies, and the item cost. You'll need a master seal for advanced classes and a second seal for base classes. Once you hit max level with an advanced class, you can change into any advanced class so long as you have a second seal and the required weapon proficiencies. You can even use a second seal to reset a unit's current class in order to level it up more. Your stats will stay the same if you reset your current class, but they may alter slightly if you decide to change to a new one. It's in your best interest to change classes once you hit max level. The worst thing you can do is let a unit sit at level 20 for an extended period of time, so I highly recommend looking over all the different classes and seeing what skills come with them. Along with classes comes skills. There are 5 different types of skills in Fire Emblem Engage. Inherited, which are skills learned through emblem rings. Personal, which are skills unique to that character. Class, which are skills unique to that advanced class. Sync, which are skills tied to the equipped emblem ring. And Engage skills, which can only be utilized while engaged. This may sound overwhelming, but in actuality, the only skills you can really mix and match are the inherited ones you get from emblems. Still, inherited skills don't automatically equip, so make sure you're equipping skills in the inventory menu. There is a lot to do in your home above the clouds, but which activities should you prioritize? These next few segments will tell you exactly that, starting with weapons and items. Weapons don't break this time around, but you can upgrade them with money and crafting materials. Technically, you can upgrade just about every single weapon in the game. Don't let this overwhelm you though. Basic weapons you acquire at the beginning of the game aren't usually worth your time or resources. Instead, I recommend only upgrading the unique and legendary weapons that you will probably use throughout the entire game. As for items, make sure you're stocked up on vulneries and staves, which, unlike weapons, can break after a certain amount of uses. A bit later in the game, you can also purchase master seals and second seals, items that are incredibly important as you progress through the story. Money can be tight in the latter half of the game, so make sure you are saving some just in case you need to make a last-minute supply run. There are 2 types of rings in Fire Emblem Engage, emblem rings and bond rings. Emblem rings house the spirit of a past Fire Emblem hero to fight alongside you. These rings are unmissable and obtained as you make your way through the story. Bond rings can be purchased with bond fragments and give units small stat boosts. Both types of rings can be managed in the ring chamber located next to the cafe terrace. Here, units can inherit skills from emblem rings, you can craft and combine new bond rings, and oddly enough, you can polish your emblem rings. Especially early on, it's important to inherit emblem ring skills from Marth, Micaiah, and Celica. There are a lot of important skills that you'll want to learn, like Micaiah's Healing Wind. This will allow a healer to regain some of their own health whenever they heal another unit. Bond rings, on the other hand, are useful early on when you only have a few emblem rings. You can equip these on your emblem ringless unit for nice stat buffs. However, the further you get, the less useful these rings are, and you will probably want to save your bond fragments for the arena. After each battle, you can return to the Somniel's arena and participate in 3 battles. For these battles, you pick one unit and that unit is pitted against another character randomly. After each battle, the unit you selected will get some experience whether they win or lose, and the bond between those 2 units will increase. Even if you are eager to get to the next battle, I highly recommend stopping in at the arena after each skirmish just to get some free XP. It's worth noting that the arena can't make a low-level unit viable, at least not in a reasonable amount of time. If Jean is still level 1, he's probably going to stay level 1 unless you bring him into battle. Additionally, you can also battle emblems in the arena. However, this works a little differently. By using bond fragments, here you can increase the bond between a specific unit and an emblem as much as you'd like. It can cost a fair amount of bond fragments, but it may be worth it, as maxing out your bond with an emblem can take a long time otherwise.
Next time for sure.
Thank you for sparring with me.
Resources in Fire Emblem Engage are important, particularly metals used to upgrade your weapons. The best way to get a consistent flow of resources is by tending to your livestock. Up to 5 animals you've adopted can graze in the pen. The animals left out will produce resources after each battle. In my experience, dogs provide metals, I'm assuming they just dig them up, while cats provide fish. There are a bunch of different animals that could potentially provide a bunch of different resources, so pay close attention to which items you find next to your animals. I almost exclusively only keep dogs in my animal pen because I found metals to be a bit more important than cooking ingredients, and because dogs are better. There's also a bunch of other stuff you can collect at the Somniel between battles. It's usually in your best interest to pick everything up, but this gets old fast, so I'd prioritize your animal pen and the spring near Sami. Here you'll find some extra bond fragments. If you want to fast track your character's relationship with another, just give them a load of gifts. All at once, like 30 pretty pebbles that they'll have absolutely no use for. There is no limit to the amount of gifts you can give to a unit, so if there's a character you like a lot, just shower them with obnoxious gifts. Just make sure they respond positively to your gift, otherwise you'll need to find or buy them something else. Keep in mind, your character is the only character who can give gifts. This means that if you want to increase Fram and Clan's bond, they need to fight alongside each other. In the Cafe Terrace, you'll find Alear's desk. Here you can donate to one of the 4 different countries and claim achievements for easy bond fragments. You don't need to return here after each battle, but it's a good idea to stop by after a big payday or after a ton of achievements have popped. Donating to countries will give you some resources that increase the rewards when completing a skirmish in that country. I wouldn't blow all your money on donations like I did because gold is tougher to come by in the second half, but this is still important. Along with support conversations, Fire Emblem Engage introduces bond conversations. These are basically the same, but show characters interacting with Emblem heroes. They are far less interesting than support conversations, but just as important, as they will increase the effectiveness between a unit and an emblem. In order to access both types of conversations, press plus, go to references, and here you'll find support and bond conversations. It's important to note that both types of bonds can't progress until these conversations have been completed. Make sure you check out this menu between each battle. There's 14 tips that you can take with you when you start up Fire Emblem Engage for the first time, and feel free to leave your tips in the comments below. For more on Intelligent Systems tactical RPG, including my review, stay tuned to GameSpot.